All right, guys. So now it's time for the GME video. So basically, when GameStop back in January of 2021 first closed, literally I had like a very tiny position in it, and at that time I remember I was extremely happy with what was happening with Doge. That was just me taking you back to that time. Um, and I was just fresh out of kind of like a few months in from making a good amount of money in from the rebounding market of the 2020 shutdown. Remember, just for those of you who wants to know, my first stock profiting huge on like big since the 2020 crash was Party City. It was such a sweet thing. I mean, I bought that thing in the 14 cents range, 14 something like 14.80, like 14 cents and 8 point, like 8.2, something like something stupid, right? Um, and I rode that thing like way up into the dollars. Like I remember selling it at 641, and even that was so low compared to where it ended up going. But again, this is stock market. No one knows the exact spot it's going to start dropping from, or the exact moment is going to start rising up from. We can have enough implications and reasoning to possibly make a theory of why for either, but it's not necessarily the thing. And I would always rather be a happy investor than a sorrow investor. So I know most of us out there are like, oh my God, so you're in these plays too. So how are you not a sorrow player? That's when this GME video comes in play. So guys, the last video I said, the title was Understanding the Market and Adapting to the Conditions of It. That does not mean if we're going down, that means, money stops. Because that's not how they think, the institutions themselves. So you gotta understand what market you're in, and you gotta adapt to it. This is a different kind of market than majority of markets that ever coexisted. But that's the difference here, is that these kind of conditions only occur in recession times, similarly to when they say, that saying, they say there's always every 12 to 15 years there's a market crash. Well, if numerically, if that is true, and it numerically it is in a way, you will have, it's very rare for you to have repetitive customers from previous recessions to be back into a different one. So like in it, like what I'm trying to get to here is majority of the people in this market now, especially retail, are people who have not witnessed 2008. They might have heard about it. They might have been around, obviously, for it, but they were either very, very young or were not in it or participating in it. It was just outside noise, hearing about how gas prices are going high and homes are dropping in value and all that kind of stuff. That's the only thing. Or we watched a couple of movies and documentaries about it. But now you're in the front lines. You're in the stock market itself. So you would get to feel what those felt back then. Now, obviously, I'm not saying everyone is not. Like that hasn't that was back there in that market is not here in this market. I'm obviously saying it's just a much lower number than the previous than what is anticipated or whatever is thought about. If you knew this, you knew this. If you didn't, obviously now you know this. Now what I have done, obviously, with GME weeks ago, I've made a video and I called it, how people get screwed up on options and option plays quite a lot. And we do know that this is a true fact. And I simply have said that, hey, when people go and start opening these options, all they see is literally two options, either an uncovered long call or an uncovered long put. And while those are the easiest, but they're the riskiest as well. Well, besides a long short, that stands alone as the riskiest one, because the long call, you just lose whatever money you put in. If you lose, the worst case scenario. Same thing for the put, an uncovered put. But a short, then it's unlimited losses until it gets closed. Obviously margined in same time, and you close it out. So with GME, so when I made that video back then, we were in the 130 range, and there was a couple of indications, when I was telling you guys, like, you got to remember dates, you got to look at times, and in this case we knew that there was an earnings call, obviously, for GME coming up on March 17th. So knowing that, here's the thing. Since I was playing in options back then, I do a lot of options, guys. I've done a lot of options for 2 straight years now, over 2 years. So doing that, I knew that there was going to be some volatility in GME's price. It's obvious around that call, around that time frame of the call, which is where we at now. So what I have done is I went and I have opened up a few positions, which were option positions, and they were straddle idea. They were not just an uncovered call or an uncovered put. And here's why I put a straddle, because I explained on those videos weeks ago that gives you more protection on the upside or the downside. The only thing that you get screwed on with the straddle is if the price stays relevantly consolidating, or it doesn't have a big price swing. Like, in order for you to make money with the straddles, you would need it to move up really high, or you need it to move down really low. Well, that's what happened with that. I've opened up those few positions because at the end of the day, on the option chain, GME is still expensive. Now, it was much cheaper to buy the calls, because on the straddle, you basically buy in the same expiration date, but you're buying 2 options, 1 put and 1 call. And those 2 are on the same strike price as well. So like when I bought them, it was at the 100, it was 128 and some change. So I bought the 128 strike price going up or going down. Okay. Now the call is much cheaper at that point than the put. I mean, this costs a lot too, because again, GME is not a cheap price. So therefore the options for it is very, very expensive. But since I wanted to make this play, and again, as a trader, you have to do some plays. You can't just be like, oh, I'm going in for something that's just 100%. That 2020 time, that is over now. Back then you could have literally went across the aisle on anything that was sure to stay around until the market opens back up, and you were going to make a lot of money on it. Again, Party City. It was the simplest thing. I literally just like put a bunch of my money in there, whatever I'd gotten, whatever stimulus money I had at that time, everything was jumping in it. And guess what? It was the easiest money make. The only thing literally that time I had to do was buy and hold. That was it. That was a really easy buy and hold. About 4 or 5 months in, done deal. Crazy run up. But in this case, I knew that this was, again, like around that call, some volatility was going to happen. And that's why I made that video about the straddles and the strangles strategies back then. Because there's no way you could expect it to be the most bullish, and it most likely will be, reports earning. But guess what? You can still go down. And then if you played it on the call side, guess what? You just lost all your money. And you can go out there and cry to whatever, John Stewart and whoever you want. Nothing's going to get that money back. You're playing options. This is deep waters, my friend. So obviously, to protect myself in the sense of that happening, obviously, that's why I played a straddle game. And guess what? It paid off really well. Like, you see where I bought it at what range just weeks ago, and where it is now. In the 70s, and I closed my position obviously today because it could even be more volatile, but obviously this is not something I want to do, because there's a huge chance that they themselves have been riding it down, so now that they could lose all the people who made like, you know, YOLO calls on GME could basically, on that strike price, all those strike prices and all that option chain gets screwed over. Now I leave all the crying and all the complaining about how they're screwing the market at this point. I'll leave that to whoever did these crazy plays. But for me, I'm gonna enjoy this profit. I took them out, and guess what? For me, this is a very good point to actually enter GME if you have not entered from before, because at the end of the day, like I didn't even, and here's the crazier part, I'm not even going all in with that. Like, I'm buying a big portion with that money that I've made off of that, and on top of that, I'm gonna anticipate more pullback, because they could easily try to pull off more and more narratives that, hey, the whole market is falling, so it's natural for all the stocks to fall, and they continue to manipulate this more. I'll enjoy more dips. If not, I'm comfortable with the position I've taken so far. I don't have to. I always do this, guys. I never just go 100% of what I have into something. And the reason why I do that is because if there is an extra dip, I would like to take advantage of it and balance out my position, you know, and kind of like average down. But if not, then I've taken a good position. I can look at my other plays, and in this case, I have my AMC, bbig. I have a gigantic position in sundial, so therefore, literally at this point, I don't need to add much or anything to it. It's just a matter of, you know, when this thing takes off. So yeah, there you have it with the GME stuff. Much love, guys. I might come back for another video or maybe a live, and let's see what happens in this aftermarket.